China has been causing some major disturbance in the South China Sea over the past months, but things are getting out of hand at this point. Beijing's increasingly aggressive tactics, including the recent ramming of a Philippine Coast Guard vessel, have raised tensions to a boiling point. Ever since the beginning of the conflict, the U.S. has been trying to keep its hands out of it. However, with the current insecurity and billions of dollars in trade at stake, the U.S. has no other option but to involve itself. So, could the South China Sea become the flashpoint that draws superpowers into direct conflict? And how close are we to the tipping point? The South China Sea has become a focal point of international tension, with China's expansive territorial claims putting it at odds with several Southeast Asian nations, particularly the Philippines. This vital waterway, through which more than $3 trillion in global trade flows annually, has been the subject of competing claims for decades. However, recent years have seen a marked increase in confrontations and territorial assertions. China claims almost the entirety of the South China Sea, basing its stance on what it calls historical rights dating back to ancient times. This claim is represented by the 9-dash line, which encompasses most of the sea. However, this position conflicts with the exclusive economic zones of several other countries, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. In 2016, an international tribunal of The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines, stating that China's expansive maritime claims had no legal basis. The tribunal determined that the Philippines has exclusive economic rights in a 200-mile zone that includes several disputed areas, such as Sabina Shoal. Despite this ruling, China has refused to recognize the decision, continuing to assert its sovereignty over the region. As tensions continue to simmer, the South China Sea dispute has evolved from a regional issue into a matter of global concern, with implications for international law, freedom of navigation, and the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region. The United States, bound by a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, has become increasingly involved, potentially setting the stage for a broader confrontation between major powers. China has significantly ramped up its assertive behavior in the South China Sea, employing a range of tactics just short of outright warfare to reinforce its territorial claims. The escalation has led to increasingly frequent and dangerous confrontations, particularly with Philippine vessels operating within their own exclusive economic zone. China's strategy involves a multifaceted approach. One key element is the use of its Coast Guard and a maritime militia composed of ostensibly civilian fishing vessels. These forces act as the front line in China's efforts to control disputed waters, allowing Beijing to maintain a veneer of plausible deniability while still exerting physical pressure on other claimants. The Chinese Coast Guard has been involved in numerous incidents of harassment and intimidation. These actions include blocking supply missions, using water cannons against other ships, and even deliberately ramming vessels from other nations. Such aggressive maneuvers have turned the South China Sea into what some observers have described as a demolition derby, with the risk of accidental escalation ever present. On September 17, 2024, tensions in the South China Sea reached a new peak when a Chinese Coast Guard vessel deliberately rammed a Philippine Coast Guard ship, the Cape Engaño. This incident occurred approximately 60 nautical miles off the coast of the Philippines and about 660 nautical miles from China. The collision took place in the early hours of the morning as the Cape Engaño was on a routine mission to resupply ships and stations in the South China Sea. The Chinese Coast Guard ship forcefully struck the Philippine vessel's starboard quarter. The impact left a substantial 3.5-foot hole in the Philippine ship, fortunately above the waterline. In the aftermath of the collision, the Cape Engaño found itself surrounded by 14 Chinese vessels, including Coast Guard ships and a militia of large fishing vessels. This show of force effectively trapped the Philippine ship, creating a tense standoff that lasted for hours. The Philippine crew was forced to abandon their planned stop at Sabina Shoal and take a long detour to their next supply drop, all while being closely followed by Chinese ships. China quickly moved to control the narrative, accusing the Philippines of instigating the conflict and claiming that the Philippine vessel had deliberately rammed the Chinese Coast Guard ship. They even went so far as to highlight the faces of Western journalists aboard the Cape Ingenio, accusing them of being part of a propaganda campaign. While ramming and harassment have occurred before, this event brought the conflict closer to Philippine shores than ever before, taking place well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone as defined by the 2016 Hague ruling. The ramming incident prompted an immediate response from the international community. Within hours, the Biden administration condemned China's actions, describing them as dangerous and destabilizing conduct. Captain Daniel Labay, the top-ranking officer on the Cape Ingenio, emphasized the Philippines' resolve.
This is our place. This is our exclusive economic zone. This is the Philippines.
This sentiment reflects the growing determination of the Philippine government and military to stand firm against Chinese encroachment, even in the face of increasingly aggressive tactics. The incident near Sabina Shoal is part of a broader pattern of confrontations. Earlier in the year, a particularly violent incident occurred near the Sierra Madre, a grounded World War II battleship used by the Philippines to maintain its claim in a disputed area. During a resupply mission to the troops stationed there, Chinese forces not only blocked the delivery, but also engaged in a near hand-to-hand combat, using bladed weapons and spears against Philippine personnel. The escalating tensions in the South China Sea have raised serious concerns about potential U.S. involvement and broader international implications. The United States, bound by a 1951 mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, finds itself in an increasingly precarious position, and China's aggression actions continue to test the limits of international law and regional stability. The U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty obligates the United States to defend the Philippines if it comes under armed attack. However, the precise circumstances that would trigger U.S. intervention remain a subject of ongoing discussions between Washington and Manila. Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro of the Philippines has indicated that these conversations are actively addressing various scenarios that could prompt U.S. involvement. One particularly contentious point is the status of the Sierra Madre, the grounded World War II battleship used by the Philippines as a military outpost in the disputed Spratly Islands. When asked about potential U.S. intervention if China were to seize the Sierra Madre, Teodoro stated unequivocally,
"If China were to take the Sierra Madre, that is a clear act of war on a Philippine vessel."
He further emphasized that in such a scenario, the Philippines would expect American intervention. The United States has been taking steps to increase its support for the Philippines. In the past 16 months, President Biden has twice invited Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to the White House, reaffirming America's commitment to Philippine defense as ironclad. More concretely, the U.S. has committed $500 million in military aid to Manila and an additional $128 million to upgrade bases in the Philippines. In a significant show of support, the United States provided the Philippines with a powerful mid-range missile system capable of reaching mainland China during joint exercises earlier this year. This move clearly angered China, but Philippine officials defended it as necessary for national defense, stating that what happens with Philippine territory is none of China's business.
Within our territory, it is for our defense. We follow international law. What's the fuss?
The international community is closely watching these developments, recognizing the potential for the South China Sea dispute to escalate into a broader conflict. The situation presents a delicate balancing act for the United States, which must uphold its treaty obligations and maintain its credibility as an ally, while also avoiding actions that could unnecessarily provoke China or lead to direct military confrontation. Maritime law experts Professor J. Batong Bakul suggests that China's threats of crushing foreign intruders are largely unrealistic given the thousands of foreign vessels that sail through the South China Sea daily. However, he warns that China's intimidation tactics specifically target Philippine vessels, both government and private, to send a message of coercion. Looking ahead, there are concerns about how potential changes in U.S. leadership might affect support for the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea. However, Professor Batong Bakul notes that regardless of whether it's a Democrat or Republican administration, there seems to be a bipartisan consensus in the U.S. that China poses a significant challenge. This suggests that U.S. support for the Philippines is likely to continue, driven by aligned interest in the region. Do you think the current situation in the South China Sea could lead to an all-out war? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos. See you in the next one.